Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another What I'm Reading Right Now video here on the channel. This is the series where I talk about what I have been reading, what I'm currently reading, and what I shall be reading next. We got 2 weeks worth of stuff to cover because last week was my off week. I was also on holiday. Yes, it was a lovely time. Thank you for asking. I finished 9 books since last time we spoke. So let's roll on with it. First up, I finished The Past is Red by Catherine M. Valente. This is a novella. It's a sci-fi, future, sort of dystopian, maybe a little bit solar punk novella about a young person called Tetley who lives on garbage land. In garbage land? It's basically the big garbage patch in the ocean, but the future has come, humanity has done a bad, and they are now living on the garbage patch. It's a little bit abstract, it's a little bit surreal in a lot of ways, in the way that it tackles that idea, but it's an absolutely beautiful novella. Highly recommend. Don't want to talk about it too much because I would spoil elements of it, but it's stunningly beautiful. Can't recommend it highly enough. Thank you, Angela, for the original recommendation, but yes, you should go read it. So I'm doing a project at the moment where I'm rereading some of my past favourite books. So last week we had Bryony and Roses, and last week for me I read Legends and Lattes. This is, in case you haven't heard of it, a book by Travis Baldree, who is an audiobook narrator, and this was his debut novel. He does have another book called Bookshops and Bone Dust, which by the time you're watching this there will be a review up for, so you can go check that out if you wish. This is about an orc called Viv who gives up adventuring and decides instead to open up a coffee shop, and it is the story of that coffee shop. It is a low stakes fantasy, coffee, cake, baking, book, sapphic romance. It's a good time. I really enjoyed it. I think I've read it maybe 3 times now, and every time it is enjoyable. I do think that it has its flaws, but I will have a review up for it soon so you can check that out. I have finished the first 2 books in Rena Barron's Kingdom of Souls series. The first one is Kingdom of Souls, the second one is Reaper of Souls. I listened to both of these on audiobook on Scribd, not sponsored by Scribd, as always. I actually really enjoyed them. I thought it would be a kind of time, and I think had I read them physically it might have been, but reading them via audio, I had a decent time. I got back into audiobooks again. This is the story of Ara, who is a young woman who is waiting, at the start of the first book, still waiting for her magic to arrive, to manifest. It has not yet done so. There's demon magic, there's a sense of history, there's a sense of myth and everything going on, and that's probably all I can say without spoiling it. But overall, I'm really enjoying this series and I'll be interested to see where book 3 goes. I will have a review up when I've read all of them. In a fit of insomnia, on one of the nights on holiday, I read the whole of The Witch Would Not by Olivia Atwater. This is the first book in the Victorian fairy tales series, which takes place in the same universe as her Regency fairy tales series. In this, we have a young-ish governess, Winifred Hall, who goes to work at the Witchwood Manor, which is a spooky, spooky house. Yes, we are continuing our theme of haunted houses. It's going to continue throughout this video. She has to care for the young ward of the house and also try and figure out what is happening. There is a romance element to it. I would say less of a romance-focused book than the Regency fairy tales were, but I think that's to its credit. I enjoyed it more as a book because of that. I'm bummed out for you guys that it isn't out for Halloween, so you can't read it for Halloween, but when it is out, you absolutely should pick it up, especially if you already loved the Regency fairy tale series. My review for that is also up if you want to check that out. Another audiobook, I finished The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. This is a book that I was reading the last time we spoke, I think, and I finally got around to finishing it. This is another spooky places kind of thing, but instead of being a haunted house, we have a museum of taxidermy with a hole in the wall to a terrifying place. This book genuinely scared me. The body horror elements, truly very, very horrifying. Did not enjoy, in the sense that I still enjoyed the book, but body horror creeps me out a lot. So if you want a book that will creep you out a lot, a winner for you. I really love T. Kingfisher's writing. I really enjoyed all of this book. I felt like the ending came very abruptly and was kind of, right, we just need to solve everything now. But I didn't really mind because at that point I'd enjoyed the book to that point so much that I was like, okay, yeah, the ending I'm not too fussed about. And I do think for me, horror kind of content generally, even if it's horror adjacent, the endings are always the least good part because that's the bit that isn't scary and atmospheric. But overall, hugely enjoyed, continue to recommend basically everything that T. Kingfisher has ever written and will ever write. Are we ready for another fairy tale retelling? It's been a while since we've had a new one. This is After the Forest by Kel Woods, an appropriate last name. This is a Hansel and Gretel. It's not a retelling as such, so sorry I'd lied to you slightly there. It is a after Hansel and Gretel. Gretel and Hansel are both grown up. What's their life like now, dealing with what happened before them? There's witches, there's magic, there's the threat of being burned alive for being a witch. all of that in here. I liked this well enough. I would say it kind of did exactly what I thought it was going to do, which was be a fairly enjoyable book with a fairy tale as its inspiration. I won't say that it blew me away. I liked Kelwood's writing. I would read another book by them. But overall, I wouldn't say this was like a must read, especially for fairy tales where the market is so saturated. Though, to be fair, I hadn't yet read a full Hansel and Gretel book, so it does have that going for it. It was a solid high 3-star, maybe low 4-star read for me. Going into my library books now, which I finally managed to read, I read Thornhedge, also by T. Kingfisher. This is a novella. It came out fairly recently, and it's absolutely fantastic. We have a sort of take on a Sleeping Beauty story, but instead of being about the Sleeping Beauty character, it is about the fairy character. But it's not an evil fairy retelling. We follow Toadling, who is a changeling, fae kind of character who is guarding the place where the Beauty is sleeping. And we find Toadling, who has been there for many, many years, encountering the knight who wants to wake the princess and trying to convince him not to. It's a really great book. It's a fantastic take on Sleeping Beauty. And it's not that it's a take we haven't seen before, like there have been other following the fairy kind of books, but it's so different and it's so good, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. T. Kingfisher just gets me. After that, I finished Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is her newest book, I believe. I'd been planning to read it for a while. I was thinking I would get it for Christmas, but the library had a copy, so I picked it up. I very much enjoyed this. Silvia Moreno Garcia is something of a hit or miss author for me. I've enjoyed pretty much everything she's written, but nothing has come close to beating Mexican Gothic for me. This has a lot of Mexican Gothic elements to it. I suppose in that it's a spooky story that delves into a historical thing that involves a lot of discussion around I guess race and Mexican identity in particular. It's a really great story. In it we follow a character who is an audio engineer. She's fantastic. I love her as a main character. And her friend, who she's had a crush on for a very long time, discover, kind of through various means, they uncover this kind of spooky, magical conspiracy kind of thing around a particular film from the past. It is set in the 90s, but it's also talking about the past. I don't want to spoil too much for you, but it is wonderful. I really enjoyed Silver Nitrate. It took a while for me to get into, but once I was in, I was very in. And the spooky moments, again, very spooky. I didn't actually plan to read a lot of horror this month. It wasn't on the cards for me. I think even my Patreon TBR was entitled, "The spookiest thing about this TBR is that it's short." And actually, I've read quite a lot this month, and a lot of it has been horror. Purely by coincidence. That's everything I have read. Moving into what I'm currently reading, I have two things that I'm in the middle of, I suppose. One of them is another horror book. I'm reading The Hacienda. This is a fantastic haunted house story, or haunted hacienda, and it's about a young woman who marries a man and goes to live on his estate in the countryside. She goes to live on his country estate and scary things start happening. It is much more overtly supernatural than I was expecting it to be, but I'm not complaining. I'm really enjoying it. I have to stop reading it right before bed because I think it is affecting my sleep. But other than that, highly recommend. Beautifully written. I'm really glad it's getting a UK release. And the other thing I am technically in the middle of, because I've started it, is Fabric: The Hidden History of the Material World by Victoria Finlay. I have read the first chapter, which was all about bark cloth, which was very interesting, and then I didn't read any more of it because my brain just didn't want non-fiction. It is, however, a good book. It is simultaneously a history of fabric and textiles, but it's also her processing her grief over her parents passing away. So I don't love when a book is meant to be just a non-fiction talking about a thing, and then you also have to hear about somebody's, albeit very legitimate, life tragedy. However, in this case, I think it's woven in really carefully, and I'm interested to see whether it bothers me by the time I get to the end of the book. It'll also be very interesting to read it in comparison to The Golden Thread, which is the other fabric history book I have, because that one is not that kind of slightly biographical thing going on. I don't know when I'm going to finish that. It'll probably be in several months, so prepare to hear about that every week for the rest of the year. Still to read this week, I have City of Lies by Sam Hawke, which I need to find. It is somewhere. Is it somewhere behind me and I just can't see it? It'll turn up. I'm gonna read it. I want to finish Master of Souls by Rena Barron. I'm gonna start that audiobook today. And also Wild Seed by Octavia E. Butler. This is the start of me reading the rest of this series. So this is a reread, and then we will be going in fresh to all the other books basically for the next, 5-6 weeks. I haven't added any new books to my TBR despite us going into multiple bookshops. I was very good and did not buy anything. I have had my library hold of This Wicked Fate come in, so I will probably be reading that in the next couple of weeks. In terms of new releases, I don't have a huge amount to talk about. I'm still not 100% certain when the release date for Starling House by Alex E. Harrow is or was. On my spreadsheet it says it's Halloween, so that might be coming out soon. Maybe. It might already be out. I'm not 100% sure. What have you been reading? What have you been up to? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous huge thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much to you for watching. That's all from me and I will see you in the next one.
There's gonna be some bloopers now.
Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another What I'm Reading Right Now video here on the channel. This is the series, nope it's not, the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves. What's going on? Welcome back to Dead Good Book. You can also follow me on social media. Nope, you can't.